What if you could actually separate nature from nurture to find the real cause of teen mental health struggles? Well, a new study did just that, using one of the most powerful tools in science, twins. We're going to break down exactly what they did, what they found, and what it really means for all of us.
So let's get right to the heart of it. The big question is this: is being deeply unhappy with your body as a teenager just a passing phase, or is it a genuine red flag for serious mental health problems down the road? That's exactly what these scientists set out to answer.
And the reason this is so important is because for the last couple of decades, we've seen two troubling trends. Body dissatisfaction among teenagers is going up, and at the same time, their mental health is going down. The critical question was, is this just a coincidence, or is one of these things actually causing the other?
To get a real answer, you can't just send out a survey. You have to find a way to separate correlation, two things happening at the same time, from causation, where one thing causes the other. And to do that, they used a really clever method, the twin study.
So what is a twin study? Well, you can think of it as a kind of natural experiment, because twins share so much. Their genes, their upbringing, their early environment. Studying the differences between them lets scientists isolate the true impact of a specific feeling or experience while controlling for all sorts of other stuff that's just impossible to track in the general population.
And here's the secret sauce to why this works so well. Identical twins, they share 100% of their DNA. They are perfect genetic copies. Fraternal twins share about 50%, just like any brother or sister. So by comparing what happens within these two different types of twin pairs, you can start to figure out what's likely driven by genetics versus what's being driven by the environment. It's a brilliant setup.
Okay, so here's the game plan they followed. They used data from a huge, long-running UK study with over 2,000 twins. At age 16, they measured how dissatisfied these kids were with their bodies. Then they checked back in with them 5 and 10 years later, measuring things like symptoms of depression, eating disorders, and their BMI. But the really crucial step was comparing the twin who was more dissatisfied with their body to the twin who was less dissatisfied, and then seeing how they each turned out years later.
So after all that, what did the evidence actually show? This is where things get really interesting, and where the twin design revealed something you'd never see in a normal study.
Now, if you just looked at the whole group of 2,000 people together, the connection seemed pretty obvious. The teens who had higher body dissatisfaction at 16 were, on average, more likely to have eating disorder symptoms, more depressive symptoms, and a higher BMI in their 20s, right? No huge surprises there. But then came the twin analysis.
Okay, take a look at this chart. This is where you can see the power of controlling for genetics. Notice the bars. For eating disorders and depression, the connection to body dissatisfaction stays pretty strong, even when you're just comparing one twin to the other. But now look at that bar for BMI. When you look within pairs of identical twins who share all their genes, that link between hating your body and gaining weight later on, it almost completely disappears.
So this is the absolute key finding. The evidence suggests that feeling bad about your body as a teenager might actually cause a higher risk for depression and eating disorders later. That link is solid. But the link to future weight gain? That looks like it's mostly an illusion, a classic case of what scientists call confounding.
And what is genetic confounding? It's when a certain set of genes influences two totally separate things all on its own. So in this case, it suggests that there might be genes that predispose someone to both a higher BMI and to feeling bad about their body. The two things are connected because they share the same genetic roots, not because one is causing the other.
And the data on this was incredibly strong. The researchers calculated that for eating disorder symptoms, a massive 77% of the overlap with body dissatisfaction could be explained by these shared genetic factors. Now, genetics aren't destiny, of course, but that number shows they are a huge piece of this puzzle.
Okay, we've gotten into the weeds on the science, so let's pull back. What's the bottom line here? What should you actually take away from all this?
All right, let's just lay it out, plain and simple. First, the connection between how you feel about your body as a teen and your mental health later on seems to be real and causal. This is not just teenage angst, it's a legitimate risk factor. Second, the popular idea that hating your body makes you gain weight is probably wrong. Shared genetics are a much more likely explanation. And finally, a really important point. This study was done on primarily white UK adolescents, so we have to be careful about applying these findings to everyone.
Now, any good piece of research is honest about its limitations. Being precise means knowing not just what you found, but what you didn't find. So let's quickly cover the fine print.
The researchers themselves are very clear about this.
The results might not be the same for other ethnic groups with different cultural pressures. All of the data was self-reported, which always has the potential for some error. The questions they used to measure body image were a bit more focused on weight and shape, which might be more relevant for girls than for boys. And of course, no single study can rule out every other possible factor. And one last thing. It's worth noting that people who have actually lived through these issues weren't involved in designing the study itself.
So, after weighing the really strong findings against those clear limitations, what is the final verdict? Where does this leave us?
I think the study's authors really say it best. Their conclusion isn't just a scientific finding, it's a powerful public health statement. What they're saying is, if we can actually prevent or reduce body dissatisfaction in teenagers, we might be able to lower the rates of eating disorders and depression for everyone. It completely reframes body image not as some kind of personal failing, but as a target for preventative healthcare.
And that leaves us with a pretty critical question. If this research is right and teen body image is a genuine public health issue, whose job is it to fix it? Is it on parents, schools, social media companies? Is it up to the government? This study doesn't have the answer to that, but it sure makes asking the question more urgent than ever. Thanks for watching.